How have you and the family been, mate?
Doing really well. So I'm at a bit of a milestone as a dad. My oldest boy was 18 on Halloween on 31st of October, and he's recently passed his test. And he went out and bought a car, saved up for it, bless him as well. Worked really hard. He's good, he's quiet, he's diligent, and paid for it full. Insurance is a nightmare, but he paid for that. And for me, it's quite emotional. A dad, I've been a dad for 18 years now, but never been dad of a driving 18-year-old. So I'm blessed, and I've got four boys. My number two's not far behind him. Both playing, the oldest two are both playing for academy, and my other two are very unique in their own image. So I'm blessed, and my wife, she's my best mate, always has been. And we're having fun. My refuge is my home, and yeah, the family's really well, thanks.
I love that, mate. I love that. So before we get stuck into your rugby story, mate, where was home for you and who lived at home with you?
All family, West Leeds.
Yeah.
Grown up in Leeds and lived there all my life, and I talk about my origin story being obviously young lad born up 1st of August, which meant I was youngest in year, school year, and why that's relevant is because usually kids who are youngest in the year are also the smallest because they haven't had time to develop, and there's this self-perpetuating idea that they're not very good at sport, and it's not that they just haven't had time to be physically and um, physically capable. So I was looking that I was massive when I was a kid, really, really big for my age, and it lent itself to me being good in sport, and that's where I found my identity. It's where I found meaning, purpose. It's what I wanted to develop. I enjoyed playing sport. Most kids do, playing games with their friends. And over time, through different opportunities and environments, I had that chance to thrive and realize some of that potential. Obviously, it ended up being predominantly rugby league, a gladiatorial game that I loved and still enjoy, certainly watching it now. And that's where I found my tribe, my community, my teams at school and at community clubs like Stanningley. And I just grew up making friends, doing my very best to get a win. And I think now, post playing career, as a 34-year-old, my driving passion is to help young people think about what their gift is, what their talent is, what they're good at, and so that they can thrive as well and feel that real sense of purpose. And without going too deep into it, because I don't want to take too much time, I think that human beings thrive when they're good at something, when they've got something to give to the world. Because if you've got something to give, you can give it really well, and that is appreciated and then reciprocated by the community that you give it in. And for a lot of society's problems right now, I think it's because we try and stick square pegs in round holes. People don't feel like they belong and they just don't thrive. But I was lucky that I had those opportunities.
Yeah. So you touched on Stanningley, mate. Was that your first club, and how was you introduced to Stanningley?
Yeah, it was my first club. It was my only club as a community player, amateur player. And ultimately, at 7 years old, I'd moved back from Scotland. My stepdad was in the Navy, so spent a short time as a youngster up at Faz Lane, Marine Quarters, where the nuclear Trident submarines are. When I come back to Bramley, I moved in next door to two kids who played rugby league, and there was a huge triangle of grass outside where we lived. So we played everything: football, rounders, hide and seek, predominantly though rugby. And that's where I got my education. None of my family had really been into rugby. I was good at it because I was big again, even though I was one of the younger kids in the street. But when I played it at school, I excelled, certainly in my year group. And a community coach called Brian Sowden come from Stanningley, did an after school session one day, saw some potential in me and said, bring your boots on Saturday. So I did, took it Stanningley, started in under nines, in tens, I
Yeah.
did 2 years at tens, and then yeah, played out until I signed for Leeds and went to Leeds at 15.
Right, mate. Is that back in the day when you had to be ID'd with your photo cards before a game at 11
Yeah,
and all that stuff? Was it?
he's not 11. He's got a tash. You know what? Yeah, he used to line up, do your
Yeah.
nails, do your boots,
Yeah.
just give it a quick wipe, and then get identified. Yeah, they don't do so much of that anymore, do they? It's interesting. I've not even
No.
noticed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I bring it up to like lads so we're a similar age. So lads we played against, they all remember having to stand in the line and flip the picture over and make sure you've not got a mortgage and smoke and stuff and tattoos.
Like you, and a tash like yours.
Mate, I didn't have that back then, little fat kid. Just a big fat kid now. Right, mate. So was there any town team stuff in that for around 11 for you? Was that available? And what do you remember about that?
Yeah, that sort of coming around 13s, under 13s. We had the first memory of it would have been there was like a Leeds and Hunslet schools. It was interesting actually. In Leeds, you had Hunslet, and then you had Leeds, and actually Hunslet were better team. They had lads south at River from Cherwell and those types of places, Middleton and Hunslet Parkside, obviously, and they were a little bit better than us, Stanningley, Milford. But as time went on, we had Leeds and District, played a lot of that, and that was brilliant playing against likes of sort of Cass and Oldham. Be playing against your Simfields and Gaz Barbers and David Bates and all these players that were prominent in my sort of age group. And then later on, I remember 15s, played for England under 15s. And that's the first time I'd played with Kevin Simfield. It was funny, I was looking at a picture of us both yesterday from when we were 15 at Hunslet, having a photograph. So there was a lot of rep rugby in there, and I loved rep rugby, and it's really interesting and important to say somebody somewhere not too long ago sort of put a bit of a dampener on rep rugby because they said it was just more opportunities for elite players. And I get what they're saying. There should be accessibility for everybody, but at the same time, you still got to have a pathway for the best players to develop so people can thrive and reach the potential. We could have talk all day about accessibility and inclusivity. That's my job role now. You know, not everything's about winning, but certainly for elite players, it's about winning.
Like you, mate, probably some of our fondest memories of playing service area rugby, aren't they?
Yeah, of course, because you're playing against better players and you know some of these are going to get signed on, and it's an exciting time as a youngster. And when you're a young teenager, full of testosterone and bit of ego,
Yeah,
and I tell you, it's an humbling experience because sometimes you get a win, sometimes you get knocked on your backside, certainly in a gladiatorial game like rugby league. So it's a metaphor for life, certainly
yeah,
when you reflect on triumph and disaster. So yeah, important times, and yeah, I think I'm a big advocate of it.
yeah. No, I loved it, mate. So, how was your transition into high school, Jay? Did you think rugby helped break the mold for you? Was it easy to fit in?
No, I love that school. The school itself was outstanding. The teachers were great. I had a lot of acquaintances at school. I had a few friends, and that's because I was quite cantankerous as a kid. I was very different to what I am now, and it was all about winning. It was about performing, succeeding, and not just at rugby or sport either. I think anything I tried, I wanted to be good at. I wanted to, if there was a list, I wanted to be at the top of it. And so I gravitated towards the kids who were the best at doing that. And it's funny, you know, my favourite lesson at school would have been like science, loved science. And so I'd go sit with the kids who might get stereotyped as being a bit geeky, you know, in
Yeah,
this day and age, but actually really smart, intelligent. And I wanted to be with them and learn. Always had this hunger for learning. And then in sport, I excelled at sport. So, you know, some of my best mates still today, a mate of mine called Danny Ehrman, who was a 400 and 800 meter runner. I used to train with him, run with him. Met my wife actually going to a running club. She was 15, I was 14. And yeah, I've always been surrounding myself. But when you get to top of those ladders and you try to find people who are good at what they do, there's not that many of them. And so I said I did isolate myself a fair bit with some of them. But school was a good time, and rugby, of course, teaches you all those lessons around fortitude and resilience.
yeah. So easy might not be the right word, Jamie, but did rugby become quite passive for you? So the mental challenge of maybe science and stuff like that give you a different opportunity to open your horizons because you're quite an open guy from a young man, aren't you?
Yeah, science and certainly any academia does it helps you to imagine, be creative. You know, so for example, when I say science, my granddad had a telescope and he'd talk a lot about stars and planets and all these other things that you might think's a bit geeky as well. And I loved it. I loved it. I still Brian Cox from Oldham You know, met him not too long ago. Thought it was ace. So I used to watch things like Star Trek and Star Wars as a kid, and all the superhero imaginative things. And I think you need in life order. You know, you think about the star that children draw, which is two inverted, well, a triangle and an inverted triangle. I always see the triangle on its base as being the order in life, the things that you can control are pretty black and white. You know, the time you get up, the clothes you put on, there's things that are just going to be there reliable. And then there's chaos in life, which comes down to creativity and imagination, doing things that have never been done. When you can build order on top of chaos, you get evolution and progression. So you've got to have the two, and that's why I spent majority of my life trying to be disciplined and having certain processes, goals to achieve. That builds order, but at the same time having this growth mindset, open minded, and that comes from listening to other people. So me and you are talking now. I actually prefer to listen to people because that's where the real gold is. And yeah, science and any sort of education, I think helps you to do that.
Yeah. And before rugby got serious for you then, mate, was you allowed like a free role and to play what you see? So you could cause that chaos to learn from before it become too structured.
As a player,
Yeah, so like in your junior rugby, and like maybe not so much service area because that's probably the start of structured rugby, Jay, isn't it? Maybe it's Stanningley where you're allowed to play what you see and maybe have that creation for you to learn from.
yes. I remember one specifically called Jamie Todd. We'd go off into the park. We played together at Stanningley, but we'd spend our time in Pudsey Park or Bramley Park and we'd throw balls around and we'd say, right, you get him and I'll run this line. And then we'd try and do it in games. And I'd absolutely encourage young people to do it. That's what I love. And watching Super League this year, I think that's why watching likes of Mikey Lewis have been so exciting for me because no two players seem the same with him. You know, he sees what's in front of him. He uses this intuition and then this physical ability to move himself through spaces. And he's aware of what's around him, who he's playing with. And it looks very much off the cuff. But what we've all got to do is build a team where we can all read each other's visual cues, and that only comes through time and repetition. So what might look unstructured to the naked eye, actually intuitively, they're not so well connected because you know what each player's going to do. And you need an element of framework. You know, in terms of coaching, Brian McDermott, for example, was a big advocate of causing chaos and then using that intuition. Yeah, structure is formulaic and easy to read, so in time it just gets stale.
Yeah, nightmare. And what was rugby like at high school compared to club rugby? So I imagine you'd have had a side at high school, mate.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's funny because that's something that we talk a lot about now, being a part of the development plan, certainly at the Rhinos. There's not an awful lot of rugby played in schools. And a lot of the rugby that is played is like nine-a-side because you can't always get the numbers. And plus, I think you might see from primary rugby league when you're playing junior rugby, and this is true, by the way. When I look back at my old video VHS tapes of me playing rugby, you've got a team of 13 players, but there's about 4 or 5 that actually do any playing. You know, they get 80% of the ball, 20%, 80-20 rule. So when you've got smaller sides, more kids are getting more hands up ball, more touches. But actually in school, there wasn't an awful lot. I used to played about 2 games for middle school. They had a team, but when I got to second year, I went to high school. It was when middle schools disappeared. So yeah, I never played much rugby, if any, at school at all.
Right. So your ultimate competitiveness come with Stanley then, mate, didn't it? With the
Yeah,
added bonus of service area and scholarship stuff.
yeah. Did you play
Yeah.
rugby at school?
So we did, mate, yeah. We played, but our school, because there's only four high schools in Widnes, mate. So our school got a lot of the service area lads went.
Right.
So they said to us, if you want to play rugby league, we had to play rugby union.
All right. Okay. Right.
Yeah. So, but we used to get like knocked out the national cups quite early by like St Helens School, where like Gary Wheeler went to, and then
Right.
the Wigan School that like Liam Farrell went, St John Fisher. They were really good. So they were the two best schools down here. But yeah, mate, we played every week, one or other called. We were quite lucky like that then, listening to you, really.
Yeah, very. Well, number one, I love the sort of collaboration or connection with rugby union. They're both very similar, and I think there's probably cross-pollinated skills and opportunities in there, which is good. You mentioned St John Fisher. If I understand that right, that's the school in Wigan that's got a wall
Yes.
full of like rugby players
Yeah.
going back.
Basically a feeder club, innit?
Oh mate, it's unreal. And then
Yeah.
as well as the pictures on the wall, there's a little Catholic school, I think, within earshot of it. And there's
All right,
almost
okay.
like this linear pathway progression. And if I understand it right and remember correctly, on the playground at St John Fisher, you can see the the Wigan Stadium. I don't want
Yeah.
to call it DW.
Yeah.
The
Oh, the brick.
bricks, the
Yeah.
brick stadium.
Yeah.
Which and listen, I'm a big believer in those affirmations. When you see something and you want something and believe something enough, it becomes part of your psyche, your subconscious,
Mm.
and I think your body steers you towards it with every subconscious decision you make. So I think it's a
Yeah.
lovely part, and no excuse, no coincidence. There's so many Wigan players come out of that school.
No, that's it. And I think a lot of the St. Pat's lads went to John Fisher as well. So there's like combinations getting moulded right through the age groups, really.
Yeah, and a lot to learn, isn't there? Did you find playing rugby union helped you in either or both goals?
Um, I was given more freedom because I can play a little bit for a big lad. I'm just dead slow. So like route union probably fitted me pace, but allowed me to play. But back then, like back when we were playing union, so I'm how old are you, Jamie?
43.
Right, so I'm like 35 this year. So big lads didn't play in union, did they? They were just scrums and like line outs. So like not many big lads could play. But when went back rugby league, we can all play. That's what I found. Like the junior coaching when we were growing up, rugby league to rugby union was two different scales. I thought the basics were so much better with rugby league kids.
Right.
We could all catch, pass, tackle, and predominantly kick, mate. Where that was
Right.
sort of like unheard of in union back then. It's probably different now, mate. I've no doubt, but yeah, I feel like it opened my eyes to certain spaces and things.
Brilliant.
Yeah, right, mate. So when did clubs begin to take notice of you? When did the scholarship chat start happening for you?
So it was interesting, obviously, before my at my time, it was before scholarship. So you used to have scouts come and assign handful, maybe 4, 5, 6 players, and then you go into academy and replace those kids who dropped out at top end because they were too old. And I reckon some of those conversations started about 14 for me, maybe 13, 13.
Yeah,
Remember, the first club was Wigan, actually. I remember a scout from Wigan, and Wigan were unreal. And I imagine he was snapping anybody that looked like they had half an inch of potential. But I remember exactly where I was getting off at phone thinking, wow, because like Wigan at that time were like the Real Madrid of rugby league. They were
yeah,
winning everything every year. So I was watching Leeds lads like Jason Robinson playing for them and thinking, wow, don't know how good's this? And then all the time those other clubs come knocking, but I'd always been a Leeds fan. And as daft as it sounds, Leeds were the last club typically to come show any interest.
yeah,
And there were clubs that offered me more money, and we're not talking mega bucks, so it's kids rugby league 20 or 27 years ago. But um, I wanted to play for Leeds, and so I hung on, got an opportunity to play at academy. Mate, signed for Leeds at 15, 1997, maybe debut in 99, and still there now, 43, in my director of culture, diversity and inclusion role. Pretty much played every role there is. Well, been a part of the department in every role within the club, whether it be media, sort of corporate, coaching, the rugby department. I've sort of touched base and I've touched points with most of our employees, and it's wonderful because we're telling the story of a brand which aims to change lives through the power of sport using our foundation as a vehicle. As a citizen of Leeds, I see the work that the Legianos Foundation do in the community, and it's heartfelt. It's wonderful. It's great to be a part of.
I imagine they need and want people like you at the heart of that, mate. You're relatable. You're a local boy, and you've done it all.
Yeah, I hope so. I always,
Yeah,
start off by saying I'm a living, breathing example of how this club or how sport changes lives. You know, I sometimes wonder, from a boy from a low socio-economic background in a small little working class town, who was born at the wrong end of a school year, dual heritage, mixed race, whatever you want to call it, you know, person of colour. All the stats, when you look at it, even in rugby league, points to me not doing much in life. But because of the good grace of opportunities, the way I describe it, that sport, in particular, the people of Leeds and then rugby league gave me. I've been all over the world, mate. I played in best stadiums, played with and against world class individuals, athletes. And I'm so grateful for it. And I think, you know, my driving desire, as hard as it is in rugby league, is to try and pay that forward and give time, energy to be good stewards of the game. And that's obviously what we're doing now. We're talking about the
Yeah.
game, hopefully inspiring next generation to take it up, play it, and enjoy it like I have.
Do you know what though, mate? That's all well and good, but it's not a given, is it? You've had to work hard. You've had to do
Oh
the
yeah.
sacrifices and that. It's not just because someone's took you to the water, they can't make you drink, can they?
Oh no, yeah, yeah. And listen, I always use that phrase. Simple isn't always easy. I think
Yeah.
simple must be easy, and I think in life we are at our most efficient as human beings when we simplify as much as we can, and then endeavour to go down the difficult route. That's where we grow. And you know, having a routine every day, getting habits and processes in your mind, and that enables you to not have to waste energy thinking about frivolous things. You can just go get at whatever it is you want to do. But rugby league is hard. It's hard. It's not affluent. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of barriers out there. You know, I'm chair at inclusion board at RFL, and there's so much. I said to a friend yesterday, I could honestly, I could clone myself into maybe 5 different versions of me, and still not touch the surface. You know, in terms of what I'd like to affect, but I think it's important we just, if we can all speak the same language, find the same common goal, we can do a lot for the game. And people like yourself, you know, taking your time, energy, and effort to talk about the game is really important.
Do you appreciate you're still attached to Leeds and that, mate? And this isn't um, aimed at causing any bother. I've spoke to lads our ages and a bit younger that they've played their club like amateur rugby in their own town, mate. And for some reason, their main team just automatically assume they want to play for them, so don't do the reach out work. Do you think Leeds maybe done that? I know Warrington, my age, were guilty of it. Dicko said he said like they just expected you to roll over and want to play for Warrington. They didn't make the effort with you.
That is a very, very good question. And I think it probably comes down to culture and the mindset of young people today. So I did, as a kid, wanted to play for Leeds. And I often
Yeah,
think back now, a lot of my motivation was both carrot and stick. So the excitement of succeeding, winning in Leeds colours was a motivator. But being asked to leave because I was no longer good enough or there were people who were better was also a motivator as well. You know, it's carrot and stick. So it does frustrate me when I see players leaving the club to go play elsewhere. Now, you're always going to get overseas players and people from the outside coming in. You absolutely need that. That's what a diverse range of skills and ideas and thought processes brings. But you know, we're celebrating. I've got my grand final ring here from 2004. If we can get that in the middle of the camera, we beat Bradford
you
there. And I
can,
think
yeah.
what was important about that ring was 10 of the 17 players on the day were homegrown players that had come through academy. In a salary cap sport, it is advantageous to have that depth of loyalty and commitment from a player because the heart's in the colours. And also, I think from a club point of view, whenever you get a homegrown player, I love Junior December at Wigan. You know, I think his story's been phenomenal. But what you do then is you bring that community that's connected to him with him. So he
Yeah,
talks a little bit about his faith. You're bringing people, let's say, for example, I don't know him by the way, so I'm just
yeah,
hypothesizing, but you might have people from his church interested. You might have people from his community where he grew up interested, his school. And all of a sudden, you know, when you get young players like that, it inspires others because you think, well, but I knew him. I was playing football with him not too long ago. If there's a chance for us to succeed in life, and he's just a great signpost. So it's always good for the game when we can have a good crop of local talent, but we also need to look far and wide at times as well.
Yeah, no, you definitely do, mate. Plus, it's a question I was going to ask later on, but I might as well now we touched on it. You mentioned imports from other countries, mate. Do you feel like it's took some of them to change the role of certain positions? Maybe like I was going to say Brent Webb. To be honest, I think he changed the mould of our fullback look in this country.
Yes, he became that pivot player, didn't he? He was very
Yeah,
much not the sort of catch it on the
instead of your
full and then
typical foot.
yeah,
Exactly.
return it back or get on the sweeping run on the edge. He become an extra ball player and he was magic. And it has done, you know, the 13's evolved over time, the way that role plays is sometimes an extra forward, sometimes it's like an extra six. And we need that to keep moulding, shaping the game. It's quite cyclical, you know, rugby league. It's been exciting, I think, in 2024, watching it on Super League, watching teams play. It's exciting, it's competitive. The defences, for the most part, have been decent. Um, but you always need that flair. I mean, look at Bevan French at Wigan, again, a bit like Mikey Lewis, just so unpredictable. Some of the stuff he does, high risk, high reward, but he almost makes it look like it's not a risk. He must the practice that must go into that, or just the sheer physical ability to chase a little grubber kick that he does, 10, 15, 20, 30 metres out and then pick it up and score. It's like stuff you do at park, but it's brilliant
Yeah.
because you don't need to be a rugby league fan to appreciate the skill on show there. And that's what brings audiences. That's what gets fans buying tickets.
Oh, it is, mate. So we're at the back end of school, and what was your plan leaving, Jamie?
Play rugby league, be a professional
Yeah,
rugby player.
pure desire to do that, mate.
Yeah, it was an energy and a fear. Um, when I reflect, there was two things actually. Apart from rugby, I talk about being an architect, so drawing, modelling, designing houses, and then the other was a social worker, both completely different. Interestingly, that phrase "cultural architect" I use a lot in describing Kevin Sinfield as a leader when he managed and governed our culture, our team at the Rhinos. And that's probably what fascinates me is that leadership piece, how you influence groups of individuals to get them on a common path to achieve a certain goal. And so architect and social worker somewhat come together in my diversity and inclusion role in that you try to create environments for people. So whilst people ask me all the time, do I miss playing? Like I said, I don't miss playing because I love the people more than the game, and I'm still playing a game, competing, thriving, and on a mission with individuals just in a different arena, playing a different
Yeah,
game now.
no, I do like that, mate. And you mentioned again, it was something I was going to ask you later about leadership and that. Why do you think so many people in that, well, the few Leeds teams you've been involved with have gone on to thrive in leadership roles in business? So like Barry Mack's about, isn't he leading? JP does a lot of leadership talk, mate. Kev's on his tour with Barry Mack now. You're doing what you're doing. Danny Maggs is head coach now at Cass. It's like it's a breeding ground for front men.
Yeah, I sat with Matt Diskin recently. There's a lot of boys that are doing well, doing some great stuff. I think there's probably a couple of bits. One, we was fortunate to have this mix, this eclectic mix of diverse individuals who were just that way inclined. That would be without a doubt. You know, somebody said to me, Leeds had won 3 championships, like up until my generation, and then we won 8, all within that window of a generation of players. And that's because the stars did align. We had so many talented individuals, and it's funny you don't know you're out of it till it's gone. you know, somebody was telling me a story about 2 fish swimming through water and a big old fish come up to him and said, "How's the water, boys?" And 2 fish, little fish, looked at each other and went, "What the hell's water?" You know, when you're in the
Yeah,
water, you don't always know
yeah,
you're in it. But then now that it's gone, you reflect and go, "Wow." And whilst they were all individually very good, I think we were so well connected as a bunch of friends, or even comrades, acquaintances, teammates, whatever it was, we were forged and molded through triumph and disaster, pain and success. That melts you down, it molds you, and you learn from each other. And I always use this analogy that there's a bit of Kevin Sinfield that's a part of me. There's a bit of Rob Burrow, God willing. Certainly the courage he had, that'll always be a part of me. That's his life and legacy, what he left us, his courage. Think about him all the time. Jamie Peacock, Danny Maguire, Brent Webbs, Ali Lautiti, Keith Senior,
Yeah.
lovely fellas. Chev Walker, Richie Mathers. They all played a part at a certain time and taught us each other something. So just really fortunate, mate. And that's Kev used to say you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to be great at what you do and keep growing in life, then surround yourself with good people.
I like it, mate. I like it. So, do you remember your academy days much, Jay? And what was it like when you were first in that environment? And what are you like in a new environment?
Yeah, scared to death, mate. Academy days, terrified, mate. I remember having still a bit more hair than I've got now. I was a lot heavier. I was bigger than I am now. I was excited about opportunity to play for Leeds, and we just used to do it really well at Headingley then, because we used to play as curtain raisers before the main game. So we had all that build-up experience of playing on the field in front of a growing crowd, coming to watch the first team. Some hardened Leeds fans had come early to watch the academy. When we set this narrative that we were going to set the standard, if academy won, that set the platform for first team to win. We felt we were part of that journey for the day, game day. And I loved it. And I was again with not just my generation of players, but at the time at the Rhinos, I think that Rhinos team had won for years. Like we were just smashing it every year, even 3 or 4 years before I come through. And there were some great leaders there, mate. Even in the kids, and Kev come through same time as me, was the best of them. And then we had a plethora and so many players that have come through. Sat next to Scott Morrell at Players Association on Sunday, and you're looking at Scotty and looking at Paul McShane and Luke Gale, and mate, I could go right around Super League of players that come through, could have been stars, were stars, but just because of the time they were there, they ended up moving on, going to other clubs, because and had their own cycle. But yeah, mate, good. And we need, as a club, we need to get back to delivering some of that as well.
So, do you know when the academy before you are so good, mate? Does that put a pressure on your crop?
Yeah, a pressure, carrot and stick again, an expectation, a standard. I think that's the key to any environment is like there's a standard. And look, I'll use Dean Bell. Dean Bell was predominantly the coach of the team that I remember being the biggest part of. And Dean Bell had some high standards, mate, because he was a high performing player himself, tough, strong, exceeded his sort of physical ability because of his mental toughness. And that's where it started. And, when we'd go out on the field, you might do a lap. Back in days to warm up, you'd do a lap at pitch. It's a bit more dynamic and a bit more science in it now. But you got to do a lap. And if you didn't touch every single corner post on that lap, you'd go again and go again. You don't get any balls out until you've done the simple things properly. And that becomes habitual in you. And I heard somebody say something recently. However you do anything is how you'll do everything. So whether you're going out to train and perform and play a game as well as you can, it'll depend on whether or not you go make a cup of tea as well as you can. And I think that's what was instilled into us. And when you've got, to answer your question, a group of players who've done that for so long, you're coming into a side where everybody touches the corner flag. And by virtue of habit, you end up doing the same. And rising tide lifts all the boats, and we were just perpetually good off the back of it.
Yeah. And if you want to be a part of that establishment, mate, you have to meet them honesty standards, don't you? And
that's it.
yes.
And those that can't fall away, they fall away. And I mean, this day and age, that's not as prevalent anymore because everybody wants everything to be equal and inclusive. And that in itself brings its own strengths. But like I said right at the outset, elite's got to be elite and it's got to be consistent, whether it be military or whether it be in your top sports.
Yeah. No, I agree, mate. Otherwise, establishments crumble, don't they? And no offense to the championship and the league ones, but if the bigger clubs in them were still living to them standards and still being transparent and honest, they'd probably still be in the elite comp, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
The challenge, and I've always been quite naive, mate. I was well looked after as a kid. Certainly wasn't affluent, but had a lot of love. And that's not the experience that a lot of young people who play rugby league have. And there's a lot of challenges in life, quite often in my mind. It's not about who you are, it's where you've come from and that progression. And when you're progressing, that's what's important. There's a lot of kids done it tough growing up, and there's this level of expediency sometimes in the world of rugby league where people sometimes don't do and behave the way they should, but they're trying and they're growing and they're getting better.
So would the club like Leeds accept that now then, mate? So would second, third chances be given to an individual that are genuinely trying?
Yeah, yeah. I think anybody who's trying hard, I was hopeless at certain things, being on time, anything that's organised, like I said earlier. I was quite disorganised and chaotic, so I had to have my friends look after me. But then there's the other ingredient. I brought the creativity in. It's a bit wild. I learned to be organised in time. But when we're in a successful group, we've all got different bits we need to add to the proverbial soup. And I was lucky that I was in a group, a team of players that did that really well. So any of my weaknesses were well looked after. But going back, I think we live in a world now culturally where we are a lot more accepting of deficiency. And again, in the vast majority of spaces, that's absolutely fine. That's acceptable. In fact, that's good. But when you want to climb an elite ladder, you've got to sieve the elite out of the elite and just keep sieving it until you get the best. That's what it's about, the best. And you've got to be careful about where those boundaries are for me.
So you were probably quite lucky with a player-led environment like that. So you'd have an all dead rain. You're in a little bit.
Yeah. And that's all
Yeah.
you need because when you get reviewed on a Monday morning by the coach, when you're a self-actuating group of players, you're already turned up and you've done your own review, you've watched your game, you're honest about where you've not been good enough, and you turn up prepared to talk about how you're going to make it better. I missed that tackle there because I'm not quite fit enough. Therefore, this week, I'm going to have another look at my diet and I'm going to do some extras. And in 3 weeks' time, I'll be better. I won't miss that again. Or maybe I've not communicated well enough, or he's missed that tackle because I've not told him where he needs to be. But it's still my fault. And then instead of one coach trying to fix 20 problems, you've got 10 players trying to fix two each, and they go out on field, do it. And that's what great teams are all about.
It's all down to environment, mate, isn't it? If people are confident enough to chime in and pipe up, that'll come, won't it?
Yes. And we're living in a world now. You talk about environment, culture, strategy. Strategy's a moral compass in my mind where people using values say, listen, we're going in that direction. We're all going in that direction. It's going to be somewhat loose in that it doesn't need to be too forensic and everybody be nuanced in how they get there. But ultimately, we know which way we're going and what values are going to keep us all in line, in check, and consistent. And I say that not just in sport and in teams, but in life in general. I think we're living in a time now where there's a lot of people on planet, and we're starting to see how we can collaborate a bit more. We're not on the industrial age conveyor belt anymore, where somebody passes you a wheel and then you bolt a frame on it, and then you put a steering wheel and windows in. If you're making a car, we're all collaborating. We're all doing what we're good at, and bringing something different to the party. But it's not a conveyor belt; it's a complex, intricate system. But we all need that opportunity to play our part and develop what we're good at. And that's what I learned from playing with my cohort, my generation of players at the Rhinos.
Yeah. So did academy rugby get you genuinely ready for first team rugby, Jay?
Yes,
Yeah.
well prepared, and you only have to be better than the people in second. And Dean Bell did that. He got us ready.
So a couple of things. I've only ever heard good things from Dean Bell. He's quite a regular name in the chats we have, mate. And secondly, what makes Headingley so special to play at? Because even away teams love playing there.
Well, it's our ground. I think when you look at 1895, there's Wakefield, maybe Batley, there's a few clubs that are still sort of batting around those grounds. It's got a lot of history and heritage with it. And our CEO, Gary Etherington's been a genius, really, in bringing those people together, bringing the past, the present together, and helping all of us to move on into the future. We also, I think, developed a foundation in 2005, which invited the community in and took the Rhinos out. So at a stadium where there was one game played a fortnight over the course of a year, now we're open 365 days a year, and we're a community hub. And that seemed like allowed us to invest in what was a ground with heritage and history up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago into a ground that it is now, which in its own small size is world class, and is a wonderful venue and staple of the city to bring people together. That's what I believe, and I see it, believe it because I live it. I see it in the society. But
Yeah,
that blue and amber, when you put that shirt on, you're playing in a big city team. And when you come from that city as well, it makes it that extra bit more special. And plus, I imagine, I don't know, I've never been in opposition, but being a big city, I imagine it's the team, one of the teams that people really want to beat.
yeah, and it is like a marquee club, mate. You're everyone's cup final to a degree, aren't you? And sometimes that's quite hard to live up to.
Well, it means certainly when you're a champion, you've got to be 9, 10 out of 10 every week because they're coming to knock you off. You invariably get the best of everybody else, which in itself lends itself. If you can create those habits and routines that allows you to be able to compete with teams and players at their best every week, it only keeps on driving up that standard, makes you a better club. We've seen that from Wigan this last couple of years. We've seen that from St Helens for multiple previous years. Absolutely unbelievable. So we had our time generation. We're rebuilding that now, but it's good to see other clubs in there competing. And some of those middle tier teams, OKRs, the Salfords, your Lee, Leopards, you never quite know how they're going to turn up, and you're not surprised if they knock the best clubs off. So I think Super League's awesome, mate.
Yeah, I don't remember a year quite like last season, to be honest, for a long time.
No, and
Yeah.
it's funny. You'll maybe perhaps have your ear to the ground more than I do. What's your take on the overall perception of where it's at now? Are people excited? Are they talking about this being the best? Rugby league's got that judging. I think when there's adversity in rugby league, they come together like no other sport. We've seen that with some of the adversity that surrounded Rob Broad, that being there at the club, just blown away how rugby league turns up again and again to support those who are struggling. But the bits with Steve Prescott, Mossy Massoy, and so many more. But I wonder, what is the common thinking about the landscape of rugby league at the minute from maybe a supporter or stakeholder point of view?
Yeah. No, so I'd say definitely. I think for a while the game got very much like everybody was playing the same, but
Yeah,
the more clinical teams that done it more regular were coming out on top, and sometimes by not cricket scores but big scores. But I think definitely last season people are more engaged than maybe the couple of years before. Because I don't think dynasties do it any harm. They only do it harm when there's not enough competition to the dynasty.
yes, yeah. I imagine you like the likes of OKR League, seeing
Oh,
those
I'm a
sort of teams
favourite
that,
blessing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
good.
And I've got like a mate that plays for Salford, and like just the atmosphere there is great, and on very little without being rude to them. But I think we need that, don't we, Jamie? We need them underdogs raising the profile and people going, well, if they can do it on that. And I think that might be maybe why there's big squad overalls, maybe. I don't know if you agree with that. It's a lot of maybe clubs have gone after names more than form sometimes. And
Yeah,
Hull are big on going overseas, aren't they, mate? And for a few years, every off season they look like they've done the right bit of recruitment. Just for some reason, it hasn't paid off for them. The
no,
turnover now is sort of saying that, isn't it?
yeah, and I think there's context. What surprised me about rugby league is saw a stat recently. I read that 60% of OKR fans can walk to the ground, which is amazing. It's brilliant. That really says that it's a club at the heart of its community, and so that Craven Street then works, doesn't it? Because you can walk down, you can get there early, you can have a drink, you can have something to eat, have a laugh, catch up with a few friends. It becomes a social hub. Watch a really well performing OKR side compete, and then go home.
Yeah.
But that might not work in Leeds because I know that even though we're in a heavy student area, a lot of our what you call scope free emissions, they're the emissions that you can't control, are emitted by fans travelling to ground. So they're coming from further afield. So then a Craven Street type application maybe won't work anyway. And the way that Derek Beaumont does it at Lee might not work in the same fashion at Warrington. So it is bespoke, it's contextual, but it's good that different clubs have got those deep identities. I don't know what it'd be like in Widnes. I don't know what you think. They need to be that ICI, or whatever it was in middle there, Chemics club, Cup Kings that they used to be. What is it that brings them and Bradford Bulls back into that top tier mix?
I'll be honest, mate, definitely a witness. And some of Bradford's signings, by the way, have been really good. I just think it's going back to. I don't really want to jinx it in that, but Alan Coleman, the coach now, is getting similar connections with the fans and the club that Neil Kelly was when we come up in 2001, was it 2002? And he is changing people's opinion on it. It's just not been. It's felt so on its own, like not really got fans engagement. I haven't been going in the community, mate, and putting players in, giving trophies out, or running a session, or being invited down. It's
Yeah,
just felt a separate entity, and I don't think rugby league can work without the community.
yeah, that's a great point. I love it. I love it. What's your thoughts on Goal Vikings? Seen that?
Yeah, it's a bit. I'm sure sort of, it just like a lesser. It come across a lesser hull at the minute.
Right. Well, it is. Well, essentially, it is that annex, isn't it,
Yeah,
of all?
yeah.
It was
And
just funny that, yeah, yeah. I just,
we're meant to be expanding though, wasn't it? And then it was cool.
well. Speaking to them, and I'm just looking. It was the name Vikings that I thought were interesting,
Yeah.
but it, they um they claim to have a fair old amount of rugby league following in their locality.
Okay.
So rather than them being split between Yorkshire, East Yorkshire clubs and all the old clubs, or like your Cass, they can just have their own team now.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we need to be a little bit more condensed to get close. I mean, it's funny, Manchester.
Yeah.
He talks about Salford. I don't think there's one community club in in Manchester. That's just insane. You know what I mean? Like such a big northern city, not a single rugby league club, community club inside it. And I don't know what the landscape's like in Liverpool as a city as well. I know Saints, Widnes and surrounding areas there. It's where the rugby league is. But how do you get some of the big city names on there as well? Do you know?
No, so there is an amateur club, mate, Liverpool Lions, I think they're called. But
Brilliant.
it's on the outskirts. But it's I suppose it's still but the competition with rugby union in Liverpool is really big.
Right. Right.
So Liverpool and like Merseyside and the Wirral, they've got a championship team, which is the equivalent to ours. And
Right.
they play like a regular Prem Cup, Jamie. So when the autumn internationals are on like they are now, the Prem clubs will play against championship clubs in a three-team group, a bit of a League Cup in football.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, because the championship is it's technically not, but it virtually is ring fenced in
Right.
rugby
Okay.
union. So like they didn't deem London Broncos Stadium good enough for the Premiership, so Ealing couldn't go up.
Ah.
But
Got you.
London got in the Super League with it, and then the rugby union played the women's international there. but still didn't deem it good enough for the Premiership, which is a mad one, isn't it? It's like you're taking your elite ladies game there, but you're saying it's not good enough for the men's.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I
fascinating.
think, yeah, I think the competition in Liverpool's big. So you've got the Championship Club, which is Caldy, which is on the whittle really, and then you've got like quite a few semi-pro clubs in there, mate. And then the schools in Liverpool all play rugby union.
Right. Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
so I think Saints of Widnes tried, and all Saints go Edge Hill, don't they, a fair bit, Edge Hill Uni. So a lot of union lads go Edge Hill and stay at home and play. Um,
Right.
but I think didn't we were at Anfield though, and it virtually sold out when we played the Kiwis there, the Magic Round. I don't know what else you can do to the game speaks for itself for me.
Yeah.
And I don't mind seeing a 6-0 or a 6-4 game, Jamie, when defences are really on top. It's one of the best games I've ever seen, mate, was when the Aussies ankle tapped Callum.
I
And
was there.
think a few inches away from that, we go on and win that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If Dukes doesn't do that to Callum. So I don't know what else you can really do to the mass, mate. The game sells itself for me.
I agree. I agree. I was there, mate. It was tough. The old Long Park. Some caught walk. I walked home by myself, walked back to the hotel. Interesting memories. But you're right, you're right. Just keep persevering. See what
Yeah.
happens.
One thing I was going to ask, mate, and I seem to think you were playing in this game. You played Tongan at Widnes, didn't you, when it went
Yes.
wild?
Yeah.
Was that your first taste of international rugby, mate?
Yes. So that was the England A team. What would
Yeah,
be the equivalent of the England
like
Knights now? So yeah. And it's funny, Ian Blease sent me the Twitter link about 3 nights ago saying, "Oh, that fight kicks off." And I've run into all you and Dow's. There's had been a bit of carrying on before then, and about five of them dragged me under the sticks. And it was one of them where it was such high cadence, the adrenaline, I didn't feel a thing. But Lee Radford comes running in. They all turned their attention to him, and I just crawled out. Mark Calderwood was like playing kabaddi, running in, touching, running away. Didn't want to get in, and then Lee Smith were getting pinballed out. Yeah, it was carnage. But I've got loads of good memories and stuff like that. I enjoyed that. I love playing in rep games, as I said before, with different players. And that's, yeah, as you say, your first sort of taste of what international rugby league looks like. And that's the purpose of the England Day, the England Nights, to get you in those jerseys, singing the national anthem, thinking about playing other nations, and giving you that bit of encouragement that you could take that next step and play full international. I was fortunate. That was 2005, that. 2007, I played for Great Britain. And then '08, I went to World Cup with England, which was, as you can probably remember, a bit of a disaster.
yeah. So how's the progression gone from first team, and when did you really feel settled and capable at first team level, mate?
I don't know if you ever feel settled because there's always somebody coming to get you. And when you're in your youth, you try to get this right. Then when this gets right, your body starts to break down. So you're always trying to find that edge, the difference, point of difference in evolution. But to answer your question, I guess my best year, the apex, was 2011, and I'd have been about 30. I just got back in England. Remember when the exiles started, the mid-season games? I got back into that sort of international makeup through Steve McNamara, won a grand final, got player of the year. And in terms of my diet, what I was eating and drinking, probably the best of my career. And it just, yeah, it was brilliant for me. And I guess when you're playing well, that's when you sort of go, yeah, I'm somewhere near my best, and I understand what that looks like, that nexus between your physical ability and your mental ability. But even then, it's 30. So you're starting then to get, you're coming up to sort of back end when your biology starts to get old irreparably. And it's about damage limitation then. So I was lucky, mate. I played in a generation where, in an era where the medical aspect of it started to look after players, and we were able to play a bit longer and had 7 years left. I played till I was 37, played my last game, probably 2 years too long. But yeah, I never thought I'd made it. There was always times when I thought, yeah, I still need to get better.
Yeah. And when you're feeling that good, Jamie, does the playing become a lot easier? Or is the motivation easier to eat clean, drink clean, feel great because of how you're playing?
Great question. I'd say if you're always moving forward, no, I always say to young people, by definition of being out of your comfort zone, you're uncomfortable, right? And human beings don't like being uncomfortable because we're always trying to get a little bit more comfort. Everything around us is aimed at making life easier, for the most part. So let's say you try to train for a marathon, right? You get comfortable at running 8-minute miles, say. And then if you want to get better at that, you've got to get used to running 7-minute 45-second miles. And that's uncomfortable for a bit. Then when it gets comfortable, you've got to go again. So if you want a bit best version of you, you've got to be always thinking about being uncomfortable. And even then, you reach the top, and then you come down other end and you're getting older. So you're 40, 41, 42. And then it's about damage limitation. So I could just eat what I wanted, drink what I wanted. Nobody's going to judge me on a weekend, performance-wise, because I don't play professional league anymore. But I still get up and run pretty much every day. I do weight sessions either 3 or 4 times a week. I'm doing San Sebastian marathon a week on Saturday. And that's this accountability within myself to keep being uncomfortable because I don't want to waste away at 43. I want to be as good as I can be at 43. Not as good as kid next door who's 43 can be, but as good as I can be at 43.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, spiritually. And so there's all these things. And even today, mate, I'm thinking to myself, not good enough. This ain't good enough. I need to be better. I feel tired. I haven't got that done. And I'm probably operating at a level that some people might feel uncomfortable. I'd have been uncomfortable with recently. And there's levels that I could get to in future. But I would encourage everybody to keep seeking discomfort in a way that'll help you progress.
You know what? It's funny that because I was listening to the High Performance podcast today, and who was it? It was Marlon. It was a musician called H, and someone else to listen to. And it was like, what do you define as high performance? Is one of Damien's questions and Jake's questions. And what they deemed one of the answers, or it was Pete Wicks, is doing everything you can to the best of your ability, whether it's a single parent or whether you're the CEO of a company. As long as you're doing everything to the best of your ability, that is peak performance.
Yes. And so with that, then the variable that I find a challenge is the time. So I do too much. I do too much. And the reason I do that is because when you finish playing professional rugby league, as in most sports, you've got to redefine who you are and where you use that skills and repurpose whatever talent you've got. And it's really hard to find that niche and get that same level of measurement and fulfillment. So when you play sport, you get a win or a loss on a weekend and you measure it, it's digital, right? It's ones and zeros. You have won or you lost. And that gives you then a little bit of feedback and you can then manage the week after. In the civilian world, wins and losses are a lot more difficult to quantify. And you find that people are a lot less able to give and receive feedback. They see it as criticism, quite
Yeah.
precious about it. So then the opportunity to grow, or more importantly, to see what you're not seeing about yourself, to see objectively, is somewhat taken away. So it's right, that high performance thread, I think, is right that we're always trying our best to do what we can. I guess where I'm saying subjectively, me, I'm always going, I could have done that better if I'd have had more time and focus on that. But I spread my time too thin. So that's something for me to learn.
Has it been tricky to shake off being a player, Jamie? And has it been tricky people not quite coping with feedback because you've just been in that environment where that's a regular occurrence and acceptable?
I think the biggest thing that I'd say now when I reflect on it is we started off by talking about the team that I played in, and it was such a good team. And I understood what made up a team, what glue held it together. Some of the behaviours, the values, the principles, and the methods. What I find myself in now is a lot of environments where that's just not there. And so to have that removed is almost like a curse. You know, it's like that fish analogy. It's like going from the smoothest, best tempered water in its chemistry to a murky soup. And that's what I find the most difficult. And we're living in a world now where culture is defined by inclusivity and diversity, which is often quite good, but you need a moral thread and anchor of consistency. You know, there's got to be something that we all adhere to that's consistent no matter what, because otherwise, what is it you're actually doing or playing for? It's a bit like watching 13 Widnes players go out in different coloured kits. You're like, what's this we're watching here?
Yeah.
It's chaos. So that's what I find, and I think some of that's just cultural where we are in human history, and some of that is just that I played in such a good team that no one will ever compare to it. Forget about the game, forget about rugby league. You know, that team could have been great footballers, could have been great mountaineers, there could have been a great platoon in Middle East or wherever in the world. You know, they'd have been exceptional at whatever they did at that period of time, and I miss being a part of them.
So would you say then the rugby side, because of how well it went, wouldn't be as tangible a success as maybe the environment you're in now, trying to create that environment, if that makes sense? Do you get a greater feeling from maybe the one you're about to create to the one that you were a part of?
Um, that's an amazing question.
Sorry, I didn't
For
send you that
me, yeah,
either.
no. So for me, there are little pockets that I can influence, and it's really nice to see those pockets grow. Where I'm at 43 is a really tricky age because you've you're still 30 years away from downing tools, really. So between in that first chapter of your life, you had a lot of young men in the team of rugby league in Rhinos, and they were all wanting to win. And we had this framework that was sport within the confines of rugby. So it's really easy. Now I live in a world where it's quite ubiquitous. It's so widespread, and there's certain pockets where I do feel like I'm part of a group, a team, and we're all aligned. Other times, I feel like I'm with a load of people who are very experienced at what they do, very good at what they do, and they're not that bothered about collaborating. So, you know, much of what I do at the minute, or where the challenges are, is finding a consistent language, getting everybody on the same agenda and moving at the same speed, which is near on impossible. So, the way I remedy it is understand that when I'm in my house in Broad Lane, Bramley, that I'm in the confines of my walls. They can make my own rules then. But when I'm out there, I've got to understand and accept. Can't move the ocean. I've got to learn to ride the waves, and I guess that's where I'm at. But where it'll be in 10 years, I don't know.
Catch back up with you then, mate.
What's that?
I'll catch back up with you and see
Absolutely.
where it's gone. Yeah, yeah.
Part two. See where
So
we're at in life.
yeah, definitely, mate. I'll go back to the rugby then. So when you were told about your 13 debut, mate, do you remember much about it? Because back then, when social media wasn't prevalent and shirt presentations weren't the expected, it was just good old fashioned. Maybe on a Thursday you play in Saturday, mate.
Yeah, the late Graham Murray come to me. I was at Boulevard at Hull, just played a reserves team game. I fought Alliance, played well. And they come in and said, I might use you this week. I think they'll play in Huddersfield. And they didn't. But about 3 weeks later, we played Wakefield. I think it was might have been around First Challenge Cup in 1999 that the one. Barry McDermott scoring that famous try. And he used me against Wakefield. And it was in at the start of my dream, boyhood dream, playing for Leeds. And then that was one of 421 games that I ended up playing in my career.
Yeah. So I'm quite like old fashioned, mate. I'd keep stuff. Like, are you of that mold? Because I can't imagine you keep all your jerseys because the 400 is quite a few in it.
Yeah, so I've got a lot, and the ones that I've sort of distilled down are special shirts that mean something to me based on the games that I played in with them. So I've got obviously a lot of grand final winning shirts, World Club challenges, Challenge Cups, and then there's a few in between, such as some of them special Magic Weekend shirts when they made superheroes out of them. And there was one Battle of the Somme shirt that we played in that was black, and it had a load of icons of Leeds on it. Thought that was really special. So I've kept a load of those sort of ones that are quite symbolic of what's important to me. And obviously the rings. I'll tell you a quick story. I used to lock all the losers' medals up and never opened them. I wrap them up, and it was like, they can't come out. But it wasn't until it was almost like putting them in a dark subconscious. But it wasn't until I opened them up, started looking at them, I thought, actually, winning and losing are part of the same coin. You've got to learn how to deal with both, and that's one thing that kids these days and age don't always tend to get the opportunity to do, because in a lot of environments, there's no winners and losers.
Yeah.
You don't get to enjoy the highs of winning. You don't get to experience the lows of losing.
Oh, definitely, mate. And what I know there's cliched like handbooks into that you've got to give press on the weeks building up to them finals and the big moments. But what would a week before a grand final look like for you, Jamie? And obviously with experience, you'd have stuck to what works, routine and looking after yourself and stuff. But earlier on, maybe, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, panic, erratic. You're sort of running around, being quite, um, what's the word? Superstitious. Don't do this, don't do that. Then this will happen. I think in time you come to understand that there's very little you can do in last week of a build up to a final, because you're not going to get any fitter, stronger. You're probably not going to educate yourself anymore. I guess what's tangible and affectable, for want of a better word, is what you eat, drink, being hydrated, and getting right amount of sleep. You've got to sort of cut out a few distractions and dial in mentally on what you can focus, and then try and invite your friends and your teammates to tune into that frequency, so that when you're on the field, you're all in tandem, mate. You're all one team, and just remind each other of what worked well different parts of the year, then bring that mosaic together on that night in that performance. And just, I talk a lot. 7, 8, 9. I think 2011 we played Saints. Saints were unbelievable, great team, and they'd batter us most weekly rounds, during the season. But for some reason in grand final, all that adversity came to a head, and we crystallised and distilled down what we were good at. And we just thought, looking up in that tunnel, the calibre of player. And even when you're looking at James Graham and James Roby and Don Wilkin and all those guys, Cunningham's, Sean Long, Thorpe, like, thinking, wow, what a side. But then you go, well, we've got Peacocks and Sinfields and all them, and they've been through some adversity. Right? And you go in, are you willing to go to the depths of adversity that we're willing to go to in this final to get the win? And it was almost sadistic to think we're going to make this as difficult as we possibly can, play as fast as we can, and just not preserve anything. And trusted that you may just keep turning up for you, and they did. Like, you joke, the opposition quite often scored first, and we'd be under sticks going, and they always score first. That's part of the routine. Right,
Yeah.
we're fine. And in 7 out of 8 times we won. So it was good, they were good memories, mate. And again, the metaphors for life help us to stay calm and trust in your preparation and what you call a prior wall of evidence, everything that you've ever done since the day you were born that have helped you to get where you are, that'll get you over the line.
Yeah. When you've brought people in, players wise, mate, sorry, did it take did they know what it meant to play for Leeds, or did you boys have to step up and tell them what it meant and how big a club Leeds was?
Yeah, so a lot of players think about the golden generation as if it was the same 17 players, but I counted about 144 that I played with in that time. So you're right, there's a lot come in and out, and there's those that have a real impact, make a difference. I always think you mentioned Brent Webb earlier. I think of Danny Medeiros, I think of Ali
Riley.
Lautiti. Yeah, and they all come in and they have a unique moment in time, and they add to it for us, and then they go away. And again, it's that nucleus that keeps it consistent and together and the high performance moving. And it's great to get those players back. But the ones who come in, who couldn't adhere to it, it became evident pretty quick. And they, just like the dross in a well-burnished precious metal, it presents itself and you clean off the dross and you're left with something a bit more pure. So those guys often moved on, and that was fine. You know, we understand that that's a sport.
And did you understand that early, Jamie, that it's not just rugby, it's business?
A club like Leeds, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
fascinating, because actually working at Leeds now, a lot of people see the shop window, which is the men's team, understandably. And, you know, there's a COVID Challenge Cup final win there, I think, 2020? Prior to that, mate, we made a grand final in 22, way behind St Helens on the night. But prior to that, it's 2017 since last grand final win. You're coming up to 2005, mate. Do you know, that's a lot of years in the Leeds shirt that's had that sort of history in memory of having a lot of consistent success. And we need it back, but you look and reflect at the rest of the club, the women's team, the wheelchair team, the learning disability team, physical disability team, mate, and there's people thriving everywhere. Plus what they do off the pitch from a business collaboration point of view in being a hub in the city. And then a lot of what the foundation does for local authorities, third sector charities, it's a thriving hub. And so people might think, oh, Leeds Rhinos are struggling out, they've been years, but actually, mate, it's gold. And it depends how you measure success of a business. You know, published the books not too long ago. I think every club did, and all clubs are losing money. So is that a landscape of the game? Is that a club? But I mean, if you come to Headingley, it is very much a business that's got a rugby team, but a business that does well for benevolent, philanthropic means.
And you know that gap in success, mate? What I
Yeah.
always felt was, and every team has transition, Jamie. It's a fact, isn't it? They have it. But do you think maybe because of how well you were playing for as long as you were playing, that next crop maybe had to move on because they weren't as good as you?
Yeah, and like I said before, well, there's two bits to that. We littered Super League with a lot of good players because they didn't move into positions that were already filled. And then the biggest error, I guess, looking back now, is succession. And somebody said to me recently, succession is planning for success. And it's this understanding that we all move on through time. Time gets us, nobody can beat it. And you've got to succeed or be succeeded by not people that are exactly the same, but of a similar standard. You know, you can't copy and paste culture, can't copy and paste talent. But what you can do is allow the best leaders to lead that next generation, whatever that looks like. And we probably just didn't do that as well as we could have showed. That generation of players that come underneath my generation maybe didn't quite grasp it, you know, just fell away. It just didn't work. But like you said earlier, every club has its dynasty. They've all been up and down. Sometimes you need to burn the field down to fertilise the soil to replant and reap the fruits of your labour. And Leeds are still going through that process.
Yeah, and a few Leeds juniors, mate, virtually took Cast to a grand final win. Like you said, the league's littered with Leeds Academy boys, and it just they are there. It's just that team. It's just that good. It's no one's fault. It's just up the way it is. It's that moment in time was precious for Leeds, and you guys were precious in that moment of time. So the one thing I was going to mention is the documentary, mate. I watched it and I thought it was great. But what people won't realise is like two of the main boys in that culture, in Rob and Kev, were very nearly moved on. What would that have done to that group, and how do you think you would have responded to that?
Probably not well. We'll never know. But
Yeah,
you've got to realise then, and this was more prevalent in this year when Rob passed away in June, because there was more deep reflection then than there ever had been. And when you rewatch some of what gets said in hindsight, you see that players who were very close to leaving. I mean, there's a bit around JP there going through a little bit of adversity. There's a bit about Kylie Luluai, if you're talking about as good as it gets. And the key thing, right, is that I think even Matt Diskin, right, when Danny Baderis come in, Danny Baderis got the number 9 shirt, and there was a bit that maybe could have been handled better there, but it wasn't like Disco disappeared. I think it might have been 09 grand final when Baderis gets injured. Disco has to turn up and plays well, smashes it, and we get a grand final win. If he takes his bat and ball home, we don't have that.
yeah,
You know, 2011, you look at that Rob Burrow try that's been played again and again and again, and the Skins pull a 2 and duck some Dwellens. That's 2011, right? We finished 5th that year. And if you remember, I think it was that year that Warrington finished top, scored over 1,000 points, right? Nobody gave us cat and hell's chance of beating them in that semi. It might have even been the year where you could do the club call and choose. I've chosen us, and we went and beat them. And Rob Burrow scores the last try in that semi-final. And that's the year where he was struggling, and he talked openly about his relationship with Brian McDermott. You know, he had 7 on his back, but came a lot of time off at bench.
yeah.
Played a lot of 9. You know, played
I was gonna say, a lot
hooker.
of hooker as well. Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
Yeah,
no, you're right, and that made him dangerous, and we all appreciated that was the role, and an effective role, by the way, that he played. But if Rob Burrow takes his bat and ball on, we don't score the
wasn't
try,
happening. Yeah,
and it don't happen. 2015, right? Lastly, Kevin's not in the team every week for whatever reason. He announces he's going to rugby union. Brian Mack starts picking Liam Sutcliffe. And Kev's not far from Oskies, but he don't. And I think Brian Mack said we knew we needed Kev to win in the way we were going to do. And then even that last bit with Wigan over at the DW, as it was known then, when helicopters turned round and we've scored that Aguero Ryan Hall try at Huddersfield. It's like, wow, all those fine margins, mate, fine margins, and that sport, that is sport. But if you're not operating at your best level every morning, you can't compete in those fine margins. Or luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You've got to be prepared, and when opportunity presents itself, you might have a chance of getting it done.
yeah. And on them one-off seat, well, there was a couple of them, but they were scattered, weren't they? Them seasons, you finish in 5th, mate. What's the changing room atmosphere and dynamic like? Are you still believing in the processes at that point? Does a player-led change of tactic come about? What happens?
There's a sense that you end up starting to play the game. Ultimately, you need to win the grand final. So it's a bit like pole position. Those laps around the 27 rounds at the league season, they're just all about where you start in playoffs. And Jamie Peacock used to often say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And we used to finish strong. And we trusted that we could win those playoffs. We could beat anybody when we were good. And I think this is somewhat, I imagine, where St Helens have been in recent years. Being blown away by St Helens because their point of difference was the intensity they played at. And like, so hard because you can't just rock up on a Friday night and play at that level of intensity. You've got to be great on a Monday morning. You've got to be great recovering. You've got to put yourself under a bit Tuesday, Wednesday. do that again and again and again and again and again. It's like just mentally between ears, you get fed up of it. So you get 7, 8, 9, 1 in terms of rhinos. 2010 bombed out. 11 and 12, you sort of getting old now. We've been there, done it. What's the motivation? Do we need to be 10 out of 10 every week? But yeah, to answer your question, still trusted and believed. You only have to look around at the quality in there. And it's not like they're all, 40. They're still in his early 30s and will get the job done.
Yeah. And then when you've hit that peak, mate, I've heard this question a few times. Never really asked anyone, and with you being as successful as you was, and you yourself, mate, how do you keep striving to reach the peak season on season? I know your cultures are, mate, like great at this point, and the stuff you've all been through personally and collectively all combine you into something you'll never forget. You might just look at each other in 20 years' time and just give each other that grin, Jamie, at our old boys reunion at the club and that, and you'll just know what you're both thinking. But how do you manage to reach that peak?
Yeah, habit. It's habit. There's a part of your brain called basal ganglia, and it remembers routine. So, and I'm not a biologist, by the way. This is just stuff that I've read, and my subjective experiences say that it's true. But when you get into a routine, it becomes more stressful to fall out of it. So when I said I run every day, there comes a point where, if for whatever reason, it gets to 7 a.m. and I'm not out on road, and I don't mean flogging myself, by the way. I'm not like 10 out of 10 here. It could be 4 out of 10. I'm getting sunshine into my eyes, the oxygen into my nose. But if it gets to 7, my mind just starts to go lose its mind because I haven't done my routine. Then I read my Bible in the morning, send emails, and I run. When I come back, I have my breakfast, which is predominantly the same every day: 2 eggs, 100 grams of beans, slice of brown toast, cup of tea, spoonful of onion. And then I'm set for the day. That's my foundation. That's the plant pot that I'm growing out of for the rest of the day. And then I go out into the world. And if there was one criticism of myself, is because somewhat of the nature of the job that I do, I don't have much of a routine after that. And that's where the chaos comes in. I'm by nature chaos, so I don't mind it. Nighttime, we're here now. It's 7:30. I don't have much of an evening routine. And that's where, in my own subjective mind, going, Jamie, you could have an evening routine like I have a morning routine, mate. I'm all over it, but I am, and the circumstances in life change. I've got a wife and kids. I've got to spend time, and then night time's a good time to do that. But going back to your question, I think it becomes a habit, and if you can build and compound habits on top of each other, you by nature can't help but being a high performer. Just is what it is. It becomes more stressful not to do the good things.
So it's just your modern way of touching each corner flag, mate.
Love it. That's exactly what it is. So when the new generation comes through, and you've got lads who haven't been conditioned like that, they take shortcuts. They don't touch the corner flag. You can't help but go back and touch that corner flag. And that is a metaphor for most things in life. When even if people aren't watching, if you said you're going to do something, you go do it. And that honesty, integrity is a characteristic that becomes part of who you are. And that's our identity, right? So you're like Kevin Sinfield now, mate. Like, don't matter where you catch Kev, he's consistent in it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people love about him, is that you know what you're getting. You know what you're getting every
Yeah.
time. When you need that, you get that. If he's there to commit to that, mate, it's gold.
So when the first time you lift that Challenge Cup, mate, how is that? Because it's our FA Cup, isn't it, in rugby league?
Yeah, it was probably that bit more gratifying because we'd lost it so many times. Lost it in 2003, 5, and then become first team to lose it 3 in a row in 10, 11, 12. So to win it in 14, that was a missing piece of our jigsaw. It's 10 years after 2004. It was the bookend of the mainstay of a career. And then to top that off, the lads did the treble the year after that, which in itself was pretty special. But yeah, it was good, mate. I mean, I only played and won one Challenge Cup. So the year after, I didn't play, so I'm quite off my knee. during the treble year at Warrington playing against Saints. So it was a special one and one that I really needed. I love going around with the medal, the schools, the lanyard on that medal's greasy, mate, because I've worn it and run around with it and let people hold it. But it's a big box ticked, and it was a good experience.
God. And when you went away to international rugby, mate, as a youngster and as you got a bit older, was it something you enjoyed, mate? Was it because it can become something maybe towards the back end of a long season where not dread, but you think, oh, I've had my body's battered here. But obviously, the law of international rugby, I imagine, is really difficult to turn down.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, mate. I never had that perception of I'm tired. Never ever. There's not for everybody, of course, but you can create limiting beliefs. You go, oh, long season at tires, mate. Go to bed, eat right food, get up next morning, ready to go. Human beings are unbelievably resilient, and when you've got an opportunity, and listen, I wasn't good enough, right? I wasn't good enough as a player to get to end of a season with an opportunity to play for England and go, I'm tired. I'll find a way. The leg's falling off. I'll try and find a way. So no, I loved it going down to Loughborough. When I was in the meat of my international career, it was my fondest memories of going down to Loughborough, Steve McNamara, being able to play with those other players who were adversaries most part of the week and be their teammates, be their comrades and play a different style of rugby for your country. Massive honour. Great stories to tell your kids. So I loved it. It was good. And going away, I didn't go away much. I went to World Cup in '08, and that was about it, really. Majority of what I did was on home soil, but it was no less, less exciting. Loved it.
And what about the World Cup Challenge, mate? How was the week for that? Is that something you'd enjoy being involved with?
Yeah, they're the best games. They're the best ones for me. And having won so many grand finals, it almost made the grand final a semi-final, didn't it? Because I loved beating Melbourne in 2008. You're looking at Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater, Israel Folau, and Greg Inglis, Cameron Smith. You're like, I
I was
want to
going
beat
to say they
these.
really cared, mate, didn't they? Like then.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, we went there, Ellen Road. Like, just ridiculous conditions. Bentway by the Stormer. All players stood up. But we beat them. We beat Canterbury Bulldogs with Sonny Bill Williams in 2005. We beat Manly at Edinley in 2012. Played half the game, tore me cartilage in my knee just after half time. But they were special, mate. I loved winning World Cup challenges. It's a jackpot repeater to grand final bonus win, and it kicks off your season well. You start off as a world champion. So yeah, good springboard's catalyst for it at the start of any year.
And is that a concept you can really get into, mate? And is it something you want to see strengthen? Because the Aussies seem to not take it as serious now, did he?
That's an interesting one. I don't know. I don't
What
know.
I was disappointed with lately was I, I don't think that mid-season test works with France, and I know IMG have said it's gone, but I'd happily sacrifice like a couple of loop fixtures for maybe our Lancashire, Yorkshire, and
Oh,
make
mate,
it like a free test selection process for England.
100%. And listen, they've done it with kids. Paul Anderson's done it, I believe, with younguns.
Yeah,
The women are doing it. I went to the Yorkshire Lancashire game at Dewsbury this year. And I sit as a board observer at RFL. I'm always sort of wherever I can,
yeah,
publicly or otherwise, talking about Yorkshire Lancashire. I mean, it's a real historical event. The thing is, as well, you don't have to get too purist about it. You don't have to be, oh, well, he was born in Yorkshire and he wasn't born. You can create Yorkshire Lancashire, right? And you can even play with it and have a few heroes. So if you think about the Battle of the Roses, it's war, right? And you don't have to be born in a certain place to pick a side. If you look at the history down at Warwick, I think it was Richard Neville, they call him the Kingmaker, because he was like the Lannister out of Game of Thrones. He was that wealthy, he could pick and buy his own army and defeat any lord or king. So he was the guy that ultimately decided who the monarch was. He had to have royal bloodline. He couldn't ever be king because he wasn't of royal descendant. But if you could get somebody who's a legitimate heir to the throne, who's big enough to be able to decide. So you could go, right, okay, we're going to have a Yorkshire-Lancashire side. Why not have Brodie Croft playing for Lancashire? Like, you can have one hero. Why not get somebody from NRL, like somebody lump a load of money in and go, right, we're going to get so-and-so over for this one game. And everybody goes, how was this? We're going to get this megastar playing for Yorkshire. And maybe it's a rugby union player. I don't know. You can play with it a little bit, have fun, but you build it on the premise of a brand that anybody could really get behind. And we should do it because Origin works, and it's the best game there is. It's crazy and it's mate against mate. I'd have it back tomorrow, mate. But listen, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes around. It might even save a few quid. But at the same time, the other thing to develop is, Tonga, Samoa, Papua New Guinea, all those South Sea Islands now are competing. Not that it's the international game good, we need that. And if we could, we always talk about Great Britain, and funding it's hard. But if you had a Great Britain, you've got a big aspiration that allows people with an Irish, Welsh, Scottish heritage or family heritage to be able to play for their home nations, and maybe they can strengthen a bit of that as well. That'll take years, but yeah. And the other bit is the Vegas bit. It's the halfway house between Super League and NRL. So I love the Vegas games. I think it's mega.
Yeah, it's a good concept. That
Yeah.
I like that. We just hope that our game sells us, don't we?
I
That'd
think
be the
it will.
only thing. I
Yeah,
do,
so we know rugby league works, right? So rugby
Yeah.
league isn't wrong because NRL's thriving, mate. Absolutely thriving. It's cannibalizing sport over in Australia. So it works. We know it works. So why doesn't it work as well here? Well, there's all kinds of factors, not least the class divide of our. I'm not saying that that's prevalent now, but it's where we've come from and where we're perceived. There's the football, soccer is just mega in this country. So it's contextual. What I do is change the dial so the context around rugby league shifts a little bit. And one way of doing that, I think, could be getting America involved, and that Vegas bit is halfway house. Because if they get hold of anything, mate,
they run with it, don't they?
Oh, mate, you watch that Netflix receiver quarterback. Oh,
yeah. Man. No, they've smashed it with their sport docs, haven't they? Really, Netflix and stuff. Simo's got some mad ideas, so now I brought Simo up. Talk about Rugby AM, mate, and what a time in your life that was.
It was a learning one. Simo's a very talented human being, and one of the most talented people I've ever met. He was the epitome of chaos, though, and he won't mind me saying it. So creative, so imaginative, so visionary. I think we probably, as Rugby AM, lacked the order within that and the structure. Went at things and just reactive. But it was all about and built on the premise of showcasing the personalities in Rugby League. We were just doing somewhat what you're trying to do now. And because Simo is such a good salesman in that regard, we managed to get a lot of people on board at the time. And you got to remember, we financed that ourselves, cost me fortunes. So I literally used to buy a DSLR, buy a recording device. And at the start, it might have been off Amazon or Argos. And you'd go and you'd be filming Alex Walmsley or Kyle Amor and other players because they're all mates, and Simo knew everybody as well. And then it'd go out on television, and just because, or on YouTube, because of the quality of the personality, it got away with it. The production quality wasn't great. It got better over time. I learned how to edit and spend, during that time I'm playing professional league and I'm on my laptop at 2 a.m. trying to get this show edited and sent to, some cases, the Made TV network to broadcast it. And it was horrendous, but we were trying to bestow, we try to give back, we try to serve the rugby league in a world where boots and all had disappeared. There was no magazine show. There were so many restrictions because we're doing a rugby league show. Don't forget we can't show a single second of any rugby league because it's guys. And then people are probably looking at it and going, well, this is like, it's naff from a production quality point of view. But they think, I imagine, if it's on television, that there's thousands of pounds pumped into it, and it wasn't. It was just me and Simo running round with the goodwill of mates willing to give up their time to do a podcast or to have jokes. And a lot of people like yourself will love rugby league, and we just come together for a bit. And to be fair, all the clubs are awesome. Every Super League club was unbelievable. Open gates, open doors, because everybody gets it. Everybody gets that. If we don't shout about the game, nobody will shout about it. And that's what we did. But COVID come, and I was just ready to move. I think we were both at periods of our life where we just needed to move on. We're in the 30s, and that sort of stuff's for young people that are involved now in TikTok and all the other social media platforms that are with that next generation to pick up that mantle and showcase the game in a different way.
Yeah. And the MBE, mate, how impressionable was that when you were told you were going to get it, and how was all that process,
Yeah,
mate?
it was a difficult period of my life. I'll be honest with you. I come out of playing. I was trying to redefine who I was. The environment I was in at the time was difficult. A lot of it was me. And I got this letter, and it was funny. I'd laugh about it. HMRC or had some sort of insignia on it that made me think, "Oh, is this? Am I going to court here? What have I done here?" You know, I was scratching my head. And then I opened it up. MBE, you've been recommended from MBE. Do you want to accept it? And it was just such a. It was an ice cube, mate, in a hot desert. It was such a refuge for me at the time. The interesting thing about stuff like that is, and this is the old Stoic saying that no wind is advantageous unless you know what port you sail into. And by that, we've always got to have goals in life. And when you achieve those goals, there's a level of satisfaction and gratification comes from it. But when you get an MBE, there is no intention. You don't set out to get an MBE. So it was a surprise. And whilst it was a massive honour, and it still is to this day, and to be able to take my wife and my mum and my grandmother to see Princess Anne and to see the palace, and my Nana was always a royalist, and see where Queen lived was just unbelievable. Wonderful memories. But at the same time, it wasn't fulfilling. You know, there was nothing where I felt fulfilled because it was never an intention. So there's a dichotomy there of lovely, absolutely massive honour. But at the same time, it wasn't something I set out to achieve. Therefore, there's a finite level of fulfillment in that.
Yeah. You probably got more enjoyment off seeing your family loving the occasion than maybe you,
That was
mate.
it. That was
Yeah.
it. And the values through which I imagine steered me, that steered me to getting that award.
Yeah.
It validated them. It validated them and said, just keep going, mate, just keep going. And I'm on that journey now. Still just trying to pay forward that gift of opportunity I had as a player.
Oh, I love that, mate. And when the testimonial come, mate, I can't imagine it was a difficult choice to do what you've done. But I think that's just another selfless act that you done and shared the day with Rob. How was that to get the boys back together? And
Yeah, the two well, three now, most important days of my career. One, Kevin Sinfield taking me up to lift the trophy in 2015, so I didn't play in final. That just showed his sentiment as a captain and leader. Then there was the second testimonial game that turned into a fundraiser for Rob. Shining the light on him. It's really important. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the game come together like you'd never believe. Leeds, Bradford, Derby, Keith Senior coming back, having had to retire through unfortunate circumstances, a chance to play with Kev one more time, but ultimately, more importantly, to start that ball rolling for Rob and MND community. The game was unbelievable. And then subsequently from that, you had the Rob His marathon ×2, not a rugby ball kicked, huge occasion. It probably won't be as well known to the other rugby league towns because unless you were in Leeds, you won't have fully experienced it unless you come to see it. But it was just like unreal. 12,000 people, half of which never run a marathon before, come to support Rob in the image of the fundraising that Kev had been a part of for previous 3 years, I think 3 years. And then, when Rob did pass, just that game against Lee, and the way that all the broadcasters and stakeholders in the game made probably 2 or 3 weeks there from Wembley through to that league game where Rob played just like an unbelievable occasion. What right reasons to shine a light on his life and legacy. So, yeah, some special moments, mate. And it's just, again, the sentiment, underlying sentiment of what's made Leeds Rhinos good for the last 15 years, or that generation I played in anyway.
Oh, mate, I love that, and I appreciate you sharing everything with us. Come to that time of the chat, I've got a few daft questions for you, Jamie.
Go on then, let's go.
Right, mate. Any pre-match superstitions?
I used to have, I used to eat a jacket tatty and like curry at dinner time, massive tatty. I thought the more carbs I can get in me, the better. And I didn't eat much later on because I wanted an empty stomach. But then I come to realise that having a superstition is a permission slip for playing poorly. Because, for example, if you go through a routine and the facility that you're in doesn't allow you to do that routine, you're going to tell yourself you're going to have a bad game. And that's just not true. So, in the end, no, superstitions are a myth.
Right, mate. This word is different for everybody, but the toughest player you played with and against?
Toughest player I've ever played with would be it's tight between Peacock and Sinfield. I'm going to go with Peacocks. People will get that more. Sinfield didn't feel any pain, and he had this unbelievable ability to remain stoic in any environment. But Jamie Peacock just went looking for it. He's not happy unless he's unhappy. And in pain, he just wanted to everything a bit horrible all the time. And I loved it, mate. I still see him now, and eyes are popping out of his head. It doesn't matter whether he's eating his tea or he's giving a speech. It's just gritty. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know how anybody exists like that. So he was tough, mate. And the reason why it was tough is there's no retreat and no surrender from JP. No, he won't surrender, mate. You couldn't beat him. You can't beat him between ears. So, yeah, JP all day.
Yeah. Favorite away ground, mate?
Knows the road. Said that quick, didn't I? I never said that quick. First thing that popped in my head. The reason being is it was a proper rugby ground. I had a lot of respect and reverence for that Saints team because, like, in 2006, especially when they won that treble, mate, you go there and you prepare as well as you wanted all week, and you'd think we need to start well, and you'd be 8 minutes in, and you'd be 18-0 down. And there's that Dr. Alban song, sing hallelujah, sing it, hallelujah. And I used to love it, the song. But it just reminded you of getting pagged at Northern Road. But I think that's what I liked about it most is, it didn't matter whether you went in summer or winter, it was always like a really soft, mossy field. So it was quite nice to play on. And then you didn't have to worry about studs and that slipping. You walk longest studs and you just went and played your best rugby.
Right, mate. If you could tell a younger you something, what would it have been?
Do it properly. So I've got my wrists are cabbaged like really bad.
Oh, right,
That's as
okay.
much flexibility. So if you think about that, you might look at see this finger here, the knuckle.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of my joints are like that, and that's because I'm just trying to lift heavy weight and thinking more about getting an extra 2.5 kilo in rather than doing the technique right. You know, bulging discs and all sorts. If I'd looked after myself a little bit better, I'd perhaps be in better nick now. But at the same time, those decisions mold you into who you are, and I'm not too disappointed with who I am. I try my best.
No, not at all, mate. It's what a fella. So if you've had a few beers, mate, I don't know if you're drinking or if you're out with the lads and you've got a microphone in your hand, what you giving us on the karaoke?
What a question. Do you know what? My biggest weakness, I don't remember songs. Corporate prayers are really hard. There's a few mind blanks I have, and songs I've never had a great voice. I wish I could pick a power, mate, a download an ability. It'd be to be able to sing on karaoke. What song do I wish I could sing really well? I will say it'd have to be one of my favourite songs, and it'd be "Live and Die in These Towns." I think it's by
Oh,
The
the
Enemy. And
enemy.
the reason being,
Yeah.
right, is because it's at the start of the As Good as It Gets documentary. And at the start of it, you can see three kids running through the streets playing at rugby ball. And they're all my three boys. They're my sons.
Oh,
We used
class.
them as actors and we spent a full day filming with them. And they went out, and by the end of it, they were absolutely knackered, like so tired. They were only young. And every time I see it, there's two bits. This idea of humility about growing up in a town like Bramley. And I still live here now. I'm in Bramley right now. I live 100 metres away from the house I lived in when I signed for Leeds. So there's that humility of living and dying in these towns. This is my home. And then seeing my boys represent me, is really, I'm really proud. I get choked up. So that's what I'd love to be able to sing.
That's a boss song, that, though, mate. It's a good song, that. Right. If you're willing to, I understand you might not be, mate. A 1 to 13 that you played with.
Oh, I put me on spot there. I'll just shout out what comes to mind first. Is that all right?
So, yeah, yeah.
I should give it a bit more thought. So I'd go with Brent Webb.
Yeah.
On one wing, I'd have Ryan Hall.
Yeah.
Centre, I'll go with centre first. Keith Senior, not necessarily on that side. Oh, who's other five? Who's other winger?
See, I was before when I mentioned signings, I was going to mention Scott Donald was deceiving, wasn't
Scott, he was great, mate. He was
he?
great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with one of our own. He was, mate. He's probably underrated, and I'm gonna say he wasn't the best professional, but he was unbelievably talented. And I'm thinking about Lee Smith. He could play
I knew you were
anywhere,
going to say Lee.
fullback.
Yeah.
But mate, he'd come up with some things and you go, flipping it, that was good. It was like a mini Magsy. So
Yeah.
we'll go with him. Other centre. I'm gonna go with one of my own boys of Leeds and go with Chev Walker
Yeah.
in his prime. Six. This is where it gets tricky. You've got to go 6, 7. I'd have to be Rob and Magsy, not in that order. Magsy, Rob. Kev's gonna go 13 because you've got to have Kevin there. The challenge is getting Kevin
Yeah.
at 6. Kev's got to be somewhere. We'd have to put him at 13. So back row, I'm not including myself in this. So you go Gaz Ellis, Alan Lau-TT. Front row, you have to go. I'd have to, but so you're stuck between Baz, as in Barry McDermott, Morley, and Peacock. I'm going to go with, because of the long-term relationship, Baz and Peacock. Number 9. Oh man. Only because he'd probably be only overseas player, would he? Maybe apart from Ali. I'm stuck between Disco and Danny Medeiros. I'm gonna go with Danny Medeiros just because he's just world class, but down to earth. And he come over to that league game off his own back. He flew over. You might have seen him on Sky, did an interview, and he's just a champion of a bloke, mate. So it's always Matt, by the way. But yeah, I've got to throw Danny Medeiros in there.